So what did you expect coming to Chimbote?
Just hearing about it and participating in it are two very different things, and it was kind of amazing to take part in it.
And how did the trip compare to your expectations?
It was just so different. Like seeing photos, I thought, wow, these little girls look so excited that he's here, but actually coming and seeing the little girls, I like broke down seeing them receive all the gifts and how happy their faces were. It was so awesome to see that. My favorite part of the trip was definitely when we would gather and see everybody's house after we had finished building it, all finished and done, and we would give them all a big suitcase full of stuff, and just seeing their faces, they were just shocked, and it was just an amazing feeling to see that.
And how did the trip compare to your expectation?
Yeah, so God completely unsettled me. Felt like I was broken down. This trip did, even what I was saying before we left, help to soften my heart and hopefully make a more fertile soil in my own life. Probably the closing worship service last night was a highlight for me of the trip. I, during the passing of the peace, got up and just started moving all the way into the back and realized in the back rows was where the disabled people we had taken to the beach were the children we had taken to the beach, and the families whose homes I had helped build were all sitting in the back of the church. And I noticed that the family we helped with and their neighbors, I could tell they weren't used to or comfortable being in a church setting. And so instead of going and sitting back with the group up front, I chose to sit in the back just with these folks and just feeling the power of Christ's love for them, and just being amongst the people of Chimbote was a powerful moment.
Did you have a favorite part?
I guess the favorite part was, when you realize that the energy and efforts that you put into the house is, and when the families came in and just seeing the final product it's very rewarding. Pretty amazing stuff. Things can build with one drop and one conversation, and those things can grow into something that's quite substantial.
I was expecting kind of a broken city. Most of the houses, their roofs had caved in. They had sterile walls, and it just made me realize how poor they were.
And did you have a favorite part of this trip?
Yeah, just seeing how happy everyone was and welcoming and being able to help build these houses was just such a great time.
So what did you expect coming to Chimbote?
Well, this was my first time in Chimbote, and to be honest, I really didn't have any expectations. I wasn't sure what I was kind of getting myself into. All I knew is that we were going to come down here and do something. And that was kind of what was attracting me to the experience, because I didn't really have any preset notions of what the experience would be like. But I guess I thought it would be more similar to my other vacations I've taken to foreign countries as more of a tourist, but this one has been a lot different. The main thing that I thought was great is how we were able to build a relationship with the people in such a short amount of time. Because I feel like we were only communicating with our families for several days, but I feel like we were able to build a connection with them, and I thought that was amazing. My favorite part was probably the last night when we had like the fiesta and the final mass, because not only was it like the culminating experience, but also because we saw so many faces that we recognized.
Basically coming and just building a house. It was my expectation. Building the house was so much more than I could even have ever understood. It was not only building a house, but it was building relationships, and then seeing the grateful and thankful families and how touched they were and how they touched us. And not only the interactions with the kids and the families, but also the interactions amongst our group was phenomenal. And it was so exciting to see so many of you guys grow and all of us grow in such different ways. I do think that the blessing of the house was sort of the icing on the cake, because it was a way to nicely tell them how thankful we were to allow us into your house, and hoping that they that this would really mean help them out, and that we will pray for them forever. They've forever touched our lives. We'll never forget them.
My daughter Caroline was going through some tough stuff, and I just wanted her to be here with me. I was almost distracted because I wanted her to be here and to see the joy that's here, and see that the issues we were going through at home, I mean, just pale in comparison to the struggles that are here. And that there's just something about being here that feels closer to God. And maybe it's just easier without all the material wealth and distractions. I didn't know what the rest of the group would look like. It just seemed like a cobbled together group of, random misfit folks. And, God's plan, it was anything but that. I mean, the group came together in a way that exceeded any expectation I had, and the way my kids were impacted by the trip itself, and started opening up and started sharing, and were reflective of issues they'd gone through in their lives. It was such a beautiful thing. Those times up on the roof and sharing are going to be some of my strongest memories from this trip.
We say at Waypoint, one of our goals is to draw you one step closer to Jesus Christ so he can push you one step further out into mission and service in his name. Today we have with us a special guest, Ellie Berry. Why did you want to go to Peru?
Well, I had heard the stories that people had shared after they had been down there, and all how they came back changed. I just felt like God was saying, you should go.
What's something that surprised you?
Well, definitely how poor it actually was. We showed up and there were paved streets, and it looked like maybe actually a nice little town. And then I think it was the next day we met the people that we would be rebuilding their houses, and saw where they lived. And just because they have paved streets does not make it a nice town. They're really poor. We take wooden floors and sturdy roofs over our head for granted, but them, they don't even know if their house will withstand a rainstorm. Having a good meal, I feel like I'm kind of, sometimes I'll be I don't like this, but for them, the amount of things that we just kind of are I don't like that. If you handed what you said you don't want to them, they would be so excited.
I was struck by how there's no refrigerators. There was no pantries to choose food from. That every day, remember the gentleman who would go to the market to sell the salsa, that every day you would have to go figure out what you were going to be able to afford to feed your family, and kind of living day by day that way.
I felt like I kind of came back with more of an open heart. Just coming back and having seen at the end of the trip when we gave them suitcases full of stuff that we had brought as donations. Little things can make a huge difference in people's lives, and that coming back and realizing that. And
that's what struck me exactly was twins. So they were playing with the triplets' old Legos, and so kids like we have, but they'd never had toys before, and so didn't even know how to put Lego blocks together. But then at the same time, that joy and excitement was similar to when the triplets would open up the Lego bin that way.
I'm glad I got to be with this, with you, because I felt like it kind of helped us bond better.
Just my prayer and hope for you. I think that's good for you to have seen maybe your father, me, working in a different environment, seeing the energy Mr. Keith can bring to a group, seeing the steady leadership Miss Libby brings to it as well.
You might have a bad day at school, or you might have just not studied for a test and just done really poorly. But to think that, there are people out there who, they would love to get to go to a school like I do. and
Yeah.
seeing how much love they had, even though they didn't have very much.
And I was looking back through our notes from it, and Miss Libby's words of just taking a God pause and just taking a moment, like you said, to just realize where God is at work, being grateful for all that we have, and that we can quickly get annoyed by the things around us.
Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Like, God promises that if you pray about your worries and anxieties, He will, give you peace. And so that verse can be kind of calming when it feels like everything's going wrong.
Okay, but what were your expectations going into the trip?
Well, one thing I could never expected from the trip was just the great impact it had both on me personally and on my faith journey. I really did take such a big step on my faith journey, and I think a lot of other people that went down to Chimbote did. And I think that's in part because of the people that organized the trip. They really did a great job and just encouraging us to let down our walls and to open up and to get out of our comfort zone. And so we tried to do that for the rest of the week. And so there were tears in the morning, tears in the evening, just because the trip really did have such a great impact on the people that went. And that's in part because of the Peruvians and how impactful they were, and to see that they were so faithful and so invested in God and believed so much despite having next to nothing. And so I came back so changed from the trip with such a new perspective on really how fortunate I am to have so much, and just the contrast between maybe my life and someone that lives in Chimbote, and yet we find this common ground in God and our faith, and despite having such disparate backgrounds.
Okay, Buzz, so what would your message be to youth and parents that might be considering the youth trip this summer?
Well, the first thing I'd say is don't let your lack of knowledge in Spanish be the thing that holds you back from going to Chimbote. I've seen my dad, who took French at high school, stumble through clumsy phrases in Spanish.
That's all right, we'll edit it. Keep going.
Fine. I've seen our pastor Wes, who, despite taking Spanish at high school, didn't really speak a lick of it. Yet he was able to communicate through translators or other people that spoke Spanish on the work site. So don't let the language barrier be the thing that keeps you from going to Chimbote. Secondly, to any parents that may be sending their kids to Chimbote alone, or any kids that are going without their parents, I'd say don't be worried. My dad likes to say that this is Keith's 137th time down in Chimbote. I mean, he's practically a local celebrity there, El Martillo. So I promise they have it organized. They have it down to a T. They have it all in order. Don't be worried about going down alone or without a parent. Lastly, I'd like to reiterate something that Wes often says to us during our sermons, which is come and see. I would like to say come and see to anybody thinking about Peru and going down to Chimbote. Did you have a favorite part of the trip?
Touching me, touching you. All right, Caroline. Spirit sweet, Caroline.
The whole trip was my favorite part.
Egotistical. I didn't expect much from me personally.